Okay, we're ready to vote. So we have a number of presenters, and I was just wondering if those who are standing, who are going to present, could be sworn in. So, are we ready, Madam Clerk, to swear in the people that are standing?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear on the penalty of perjury that the testimony you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Please state your name and your title or address for the record.
Shane Lee, and I'm non-biased trainer at the Non-Biased Institute.
Victor Matthew, I'm Matthew Jacob High School.
Steve Santos, I am the president of CBAA, and I'm also a mentor with the Alpha program.
My name is Mohammed. I am a student in the SNTA High School.
My name is Naichi, youth coordinator at the Education Center.
Thank you.
My name is Daniel Schleifer. I'm the executive director at New Urban Arts.
Your name, sir?
My name is Tracy.
It's a name.
Okay, all right, thank you. And what we'll do is we'll proceed with the prep. Please sit if you're, and then when you're part of the presentation comes, you can join us at the table. So first, please proceed.
All right. I just have some brief notes because I think what you really want to hear is from the programs that are really benefiting from this funding. The $1.1 million investment has helped to start or strengthen 17 mentoring programs throughout the city of Providence. This much needed funding provided not only funding to mentoring programs, but also training, technical assistance, and more. Collectively, these organizations are currently serving 935 young people through both, I should say all one-to-one, group, and peer mentoring programs. So there's a variety of things happening. We have interwoven evidence-based practice trainings along with monthly community of practice gatherings to build strong programs and to foster relationships among mentoring providers as we learn and grow together. As a nonprofit leader, I'm all too familiar with the silos many of us operate in. This funding has allowed us to work together to build a vibrant network of organizations with a common goal of building positive relationships for Providence youth. Every ward in the city has youth that are participating in this initiative. Additionally, some programs have built stipends into their program budgets, and $120,000 of the $1.1 million did flow directly to youth participants. We have representatives, as you know, from several of our programs. I'll be available for questions after, but I think allowing them some time would probably be beneficial. Edie Santos and his name from Alice.
Otherwise known as Sugar Shaker. If I may, thank you for having us. One of the biggest things that we see as far as outcomes is behavior, as well as self-respect and respecting others. We promote that. I think that's the biggest thing. Shane also brought his mom and his siblings. So we are not only just mentoring young men, we're mentoring families. And I'll let Shane tell you a little bit about this.
So far, the mentoring is going good. And I learned a lot of respect and how to respect elders. Before this was started, I had a hard time respecting and kind of showing my self-respect to elders. And I learned how to probably shake hands with the elder person, how they can nod. And before this all started, I wasn't even doing all that. And he told me how to take the right path in life and not to do nothing bad, stay in school, get good grades, and that would help me, help me get a good career. So
I would just like to say thank you so much for coming in and speaking to us, because it takes a lot of courage to do that. I mean, we have trouble doing it ourselves. Thank you so much for coming. So can you tell me a little bit, so how are you doing in school? I mean, have your grades improved since you've been in the mentor program?
I've been focusing a lot more. Like it helped me how to, I don't know how to explain it, but yeah, like I said, I've been focusing a lot more. And like everything they told me, like what to do in school, and not to hang on the wrong people, and hang on the right people, and that helped me a lot.
And just one more question, how long have you been in the program?
Since. And I also like 13, I don't know. I don't know.
We started in September.
Okay.
And if I could, I want to introduce Rodney Dalzone. He is our director. So he does the work. I sit in front of you.
Do any of the committee members have any questions for our current presenters? Okay, go ahead.
Just again, thank you for coming. That was great. We go back to your friends and say, hey, that wasn't that hard. Question for you is, do you find your friends asking you, what are you doing? Do you share anything with them of what you've learned?
Yeah, like my friends, especially like the people that was at the mentor, like they learned a lot and so did I. And some people as well, I be telling them, I try to get them, people that have a hard time respecting me, I try to get them to come to the mentoring program. So like learn more respect and respect elders.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'll be leaving you because my wife gave me first.
Thank you for coming. We have next.
Hey, everybody, I'm Dan Schleifer from New Urban Arts. We're right on Westminster Street, just across the highway. And we provide mentorship through the arts to young people. And I was thinking today about the best way to kind of give you a sense of what happens in our space. And here's what I was thinking about. Like, I think we can all say in one way or another that we grew up in a different world from the one that our parents grew up in. I think that's true to some extent of all of us. But for some of us, the difference is way more pronounced than for others. And I want to tell you about a young man named Josh who participates in our programs. So he immigrated to the US from Mexico right before the pandemic hit. So, talk about being in a very different world all of a sudden, going from a relatively small community to a big city. Well, I think Providence is big. To a big city, attending school in person to living virtually, right? Huge change for this young man. It's caused a lot of struggles for him, with school and with mental health issues. And it was his love of music that brought him through the door of our programs, where he connected with Andres, who is his mentor. And Andres has actually a very similar story in some ways, in that he also emigrated to the US shortly before the pandemic. In Andres's case, he came from Colombia. But unlike Josh's parents, Andres is a little younger, and he's been able to serve as kind of a bridge, I guess you could say. And this really kind of came home to me actually just last night. I got a message from Andres saying, hey, Josh reached out to me and he's having an anxiety attack. And he felt like he needed to talk to me. How can I help him negotiate this? And how can I help his family get through this situation, right? So one of the things that we do with our mentors is we do provide what we call mental health first aid training that helps adults assess the possibility of whether there's like suicidality, or if it's just if it's an ongoing issue, if it's just a one-time thing. And, you know, so Andres was able to rely on some of that training, but then also get our support as a staff to assemble some resources around mental health that Andres's family could reach out to. And then most importantly, to be able to talk to Andres and his mother on the phone in Spanish, to be able to communicate like, hey, here are the resources. And also like, I want to see you tomorrow so that we can talk about this again in person and like keep the support coming. So like I said, this just happened last night, and you know, as soon as it happened, I was like, well, first of all, you know, thank goodness that Andres is in Josh's life, but also like, this is what I have to share tomorrow with the committee, because yeah, it's just such a perfect illustration of how, you know, we take students' mutual interest in things like the arts and leverage it to provide the kind of support that all young people need to get through their adolescence.
Questions from committee members? Comments?
Yes,
Councilor Randall.
Thank you, and thank you so much for being here. This sounds like an amazing program. I'm really grateful to learn more about it. A question I have, so for the funding piece of this, does the funding flow through just to New Urban Arts, or does Andreas get some of the, is Andreas the mentor?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Does Andreas get some of the funding as
Yes,
part of the?
so our model is we have a mix of like what we call staff resident artist mentors who are picked both for their skills in youth development as well as having expertise in a certain artistic area. And they are they are permanent staff members. Even though they're part-time, they actually receive healthcare. It's really important to us that we be able to make those positions permanent and gainful, because a lot of working artists are constantly hopping from gig to gig. Even if they're interested in education, it's hard to keep that up if you don't have healthcare. So, so that is actually a part-time position, and he's paid. And then we also have a cohort of volunteer mentors who are in our space for only like 4 hours a week, but they actually do get stipends as well. So it's not a full-on hourly wage the same way that the resident mentors get, but all of our mentors are compensated in some way.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, Councilor Sanchez.
Like my colleague, Councilor Sue Hanboy asked, just piggybacking off her comment, thank you for being here and doing the work that you're doing. I'm just gonna say it now because I gotta say it at some point tonight. All of our youth in the city, I mean, definitely deserve someone to believe is and give them the opportunity that isn't given in our current education system. So I just want to thank all the mentors of all the programs here, but specifically to your program and Mentor RI. I'm not seeing a dollar amount. I'm not sure if I'm missing something here, but what's that relationship with your organization currently?
Got it.
What it's
Our grant from Mentor RI is $55,000.
And that's inside the report that you have, allows you to say, so it's, multi-page report, I think that's included in it, has to. Okay, that's just not really valid.
Sorry, would you mind standing for just a second? Thank you. Sure. Can you just tell us again where that is?
So there's the last report that we sent to the city, it's in the right hand pocket. It says the Parks and Mayor's office or something, so then it's a multi-page document that was in our folder that we handed you. But that was, yes, so that is, it's part of that document.
Thank you.
Questions for this?
It was already in it. Honestly, that was pre-submitted before. To the city.
So this is what we have submitted as orders. No. Okay, so we do not have that for the record.
Okay, so
It was sent separately, just,
It's
much
here, it's a
earlier
second
than this.
page.
It wasn't with this.
No,
guy.
so hold on just a minute, everyone. I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, so what hasn't been presented to us is the mayor's report. I'm gonna
Right,
call
so
it the mayor's report.
that
So
would be
I like
another
to mark
exhibit.
This is a separate exhibit. Exhibit number 2, I have a motion. Second, thank you. So motion made by Councilor Taylor, seconded by Councilor Ingersoll. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate the testimony.
Thank you for your time and
Thank you for
for
coming.
your support.
Thank you.
Good evening,
You can
Madam
introduce
Chairwoman.
yourself. Yeah,
Good
yeah.
evening, Finance Committee. Again, my name is Shane Lee. I'm a nonviolence trainer with the Nonviolence Institute.
My name is Vikram Matthew. I'm a high school teacher at Hope High School. I am partnering with the Nonviolence Institute to create an organization called Project Embrace that's being hosted in Hope High School. I can maybe start.
I'm sorry, can you tell me the name of that program again?
Project Embrace.
Wonderful, thank you.
So I'll give you a quick program overview. Generally speaking, what we are seeing at Hope High School for the past 2 years, I've only worked there for 2 years, is that our students are struggling to find engagement in the building. And, you know, as a teacher, that hurts, but I'm gonna be honest about it, that's really the reality for a lot of our students. Most of our sports teams and extracurriculars, including music, do not have huge numbers. Actual participation is hard, especially given that Hope High School gets out quite late, and a lot of our students need to work jobs. So what we know, a lot of them, like we could find the education research to show it, is that when students are engaged in the building through extracurriculars, they are more likely to complete school and find success going forward. And so Project Embrace is the start of a solution aimed at fixing the problem we see after school. So what we tip the general structure of our program is to pair successful upperclassmen, juniors and seniors with struggling underclassmen, sophomores and freshmen to first and foremost acclimate our freshmen to the building. Our freshmen had a very tough past 2 years. Many of them missed most of middle school, and all of a sudden being done in high school is very scary for them. So that is their first order business for our mentors. And secondly, it really is like a networking opportunity for our freshmen. They have access to jobs, they have access to extracurriculars and coaches and teachers, and a wealth of knowledge that the students that have been successful at high school can share. And it gives our mentors the opportunity to stand out in ways that they haven't been able to before, to prepare for college or a career, develop skills in mentoring and education and just leadership. What we also know, and this is where Shade of Nonviolence Institute stepped in, is that violence makes it very challenging for some of our students to be successful and engaged in school. And we have come to rely on the Nonviolence Institute to help our students mitigate violence when it occurs in the building, outside the building, in their communities, and teach them strategies of how to deal with it. So I can let Shane talk a little bit about this one.
Yeah, so something that I love about Project Embrace in the program is that when you put the mentors together, the 3 metrics that they're actually trying to follow and improve is academics, attendance, and extracurricular involvement. And so we'll be able to look at the body of incoming freshmen that receive this peer mentoring and test those metrics against those freshmen that came in without it to try to really gauge the success of the program. So it's very testable and seeable. And with the Nonviolence Institute, it is that violence, not just violence, in its most extreme forms like gun violence and knives, but just bullying and even conflict that comes up really starts to go against those 3 metrics, which is the goal of the entire, city of Providence and the Providence School District. Being able to pair with them, one thing that we did is we started it off with a 20-hour intensive, and it actually mixed a combination of faculty, staff, and students. So what it did is it built a community upon which the program could be supported by. So I often say when you go into a school, you can't introduce something new into a system that already exists because it'll get dissipated. Once we leave that building, these kids have to go back to the same social network, social rules. They gain their social points the same way. So whenever you introduce a new thing, you have to introduce a new system that will uphold that new thing. And that's that beloved community that we create with that initial training. So when they lose social points from walking away from a fight and being called a punk or whatever it is, they now have a brand new community that they can go to and get a high five for that same action. So you really start to see a lot of evidence-based approach to this, and systems change methodology has really been brought into the program. So seeing some really good success. I also visit them not just with the initial training, but every month, besides their week-to-week work, every month I'm going in for 2 hours on consultation to just try to see where things are, how they're going, to really try to track progress and things of that nature, but the energy is high. They got color-coded sweaters, so they got swag, because you have to recreate an identity, and we're hoping to use it at a prototype. If we get the support that we need and this program succeeds, it's something that can go into helping other schools around the city, which improves, success of our students, but also improves the outcomes for the neighborhoods which these schools are in and the children live in. It helps business, it helps everything.
And I will add that of the money received, more $25,000 is allocated to going directly towards students to help alleviate the fact that they have to stay after school and not go to their job when they come to our program. So that is our biggest line items in our budget. So we are very happy to be able to give them an incentive to come to the school beyond them wanting to participate, which, a lot of people want to participate, but it's hard. Right?
So let me ask a question on that. So you have, I think, it doesn't say 40 student leaders receiving 525 each? Who is
Yeah.
that?
So those would be our student mentors. So those would be our upperclassmen. And then we have 40 upperclassmen who will be receiving that grant. Well, they receive it based on their participation. So like they will receive up that amount per proper completion of their thing. So there are some students that have had to drop out for various reasons. They will not be receiving the entire amount. And then we have underclassmen who receive a smaller amount. I think the number would be 375. I'm not exactly sure what your report says, but that is what I'm under the impression of. So I hope that's what it says. For similar completion of various meetings, attendance activities throughout the year.
And 40 student leaders are your upperclassmen, and then how many do you have participating in your lower class?
One for upperclassmen. There's period 1 to
8.
Yeah.
Questions from the committee members or counselors?
Could I just make a comment?
Yes, Counselor Ward.
Just want to appreciate you both for doing what you do in that Hope High School. As a fellow Blue Wave alum, Hope is, in my view, the best high school in Providence, but I'm biased. But I think to your point about students not having, trying to balance, participating in after school programs and then working as well. I was that student where I couldn't participate in sports or because I had a job to hold down and so I definitely feel that very much. I know I just want to say this, and we don't have to get into details because I don't believe in sort of feeding into negativity, but I know Hope High School made headlines recently, and I know that is not a blemish on the work that's being done there. It's not a blemish on teachers. That's not a blemish on students. And so I just want to say, keep up the good work. And if I may pass you my cards, I would love to support you moving forward to make sure this is a permanent thing at Hope and across Providence schools. So if I may, you could just pass over my card. Please email me, send me your, text me, call me. I want to help and support.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Yes, Counselor Vargas.
How many students you have?
So we have capacity for 80 right now. I think on our list right now, we are north of 60. That would be the most recent numbers I checked as of a week ago, but for every week we charge us to recruit students and make sure they don't slip out, right? But this isn't like, they don't sign anything saying they do this. We just say, hey, we'd love to have you. And, we know the longer you're involved, the better our things are gonna be. But, again, things change. Some students play sports for the season, so we have to accommodate.
And out of the students that graduated last year, do you have any follow-up, like how they doing and?
This is the first year of the program.
Oh,
So
this is the
we
first
will
year, sorry.
hopefully get you some data coming June.
And any future plans, what they going to give back to the community, like cleanups, paint wise, with a lot of graffitis?
So can you ask the question one more time?
Like, is anything that we can create to give back to the community, like cleanups or paint walls that being graffiti?
Sure. So our students spend their time together, I guess, at Hope High School. So we can talk about improvement of Hope High School specifically, and we can also, I guess, we can create an opportunity that's like that. That is not currently in the plan. Like I'm not there to give them volunteering hours, I guess. That's not something that we're opposed to. I'm sure many of our students would be interested, but that's not something that they or us, we talked about or discussed in a specific format. We talked about how they can help themselves and their local community by engaging with people in their community and kind of showing them what responding nonviolently would look like in a way that maybe doesn't give them, as Shane said, really social growth, right? Especially at the school, that's, I mean, one of the biggest motivators of all of the violence that we see is just that, you know, someone calls you a name and you're not gonna take that, so.
But I do think though the outgrowth of what they're taught, it becomes that, because a big component of Kenyan nonviolence is the beloved community. So we have to always deal with the individual first. They'll go and then affect others, and then it will affect the larger community. So the sort of attitude and mindset that's taught is one in which they would be a sort of a group identity that could go and do graffiti removal projects, community beautification. But we have to deal with the individual first and help them to see things a different way and become cohesive. And then that would be like phase 2 and other things like that, which would be amazing.
Thank you.
Councilor Anderblock?
Thank you, Chairwoman. Just a quick question. First, I just want to echo Councilor Royce's praise. It's so, thank you guys for being here so much. And I know you teach all day and you're here late, and I can't even imagine all the things you guys are juggling. So thank you so much. And this is such an impressive program. And I'm just across the street. Ward 3 starts right across from Hope High. So Hope High is right in my neighborhood. So thank you. And I guess the question I have is, so I worked through high school as well. I usually had 1, probably 2, sometimes 3 jobs, just to make sure I could save for college, you know, all the things that students have. Do you find that the 525 is enough to motivate students who need to, like, who otherwise would be going off to a job? Is that, are you losing kids because you can't pay them enough?
I think there is, so there's a degree to which that's true, and I think it's a tenuous balance, because with every mentoring relationship, you want to make it clear that the fundamental driver of this work shouldn't be income. This isn't a job, right? Like if you're an upperclassman, you're giving back to your freshmen, that is what it is predominantly. This is supposed to alleviate some of the pain that we know you must go through to not work this day.
Yeah.
Now, if that number was a bit higher, that might help. So there's definitely some kids that say, you know, I can't come because I've got to work, and this isn't the same as a wage. But, you know, I don't think, right, we're happy to start with this 525, and I think we may need more in the future, but I think, you know, you get there. I'm not sure, again, this is my first year also running this program, so I think my ability to evaluate what is the perfect amount for our seniors is a bit unsure right now. But yeah, there definitely are students who lose because they don't work.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilor Peterson.
I just have a quick question in regards to the numbers. Again, echoing everything that everybody says, this program sounds amazing. And I commend you for the work, because I know it's hard, and long hours and everything else. You said you guys have a 1-to-1 mentoring relationship right now. It's about 40 upper and then 40 lower, but this report here says the number of recruited are 22, and the number of mentors recruited is 22, and then the other number of mentees is 35. I just want to make sure that this is because it was an old report.
So it is not fully at date yet, as I mentioned to sorry for getting Oscar. We are just north of 60 students participating now with capacity for 80.
Okay.
So those numbers are still a bit outdated, but
You're getting to
we're
that
pushing towards
1-to-1.
80.
Okay, thanks.
Well, all our matches are 1-to-1, but we right now have a surplus of mentors and underclassmen are finding it more challenging to participate than upperclassmen. So,
Okay.
Hey, yes, Pro Tem.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Welcome, Shane. Shane, very proud of you and what you continue to do in our communities. We've had a good, I've seen you grow over time, and so he's a wonderful singer too.
Got some good time to say.
Okay. Shane, to your knowledge, does the institute also receive money for the support?
For his partnership, yeah,
Yeah.
so you'll see it in the report, there's this like specific line item or amount that comes over for the involvement of the training and the hours of support.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Can't thank you enough for your
Thank
wonderful
you.
work and also for coming this evening, so thank you.
Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
Chairwoman and Finance Committee.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, good evening. Thank you so much for coming. You would mind introducing yourself again and go ahead and start your presentation.
Yes, thank you so much for this opportunity. My name is Mike. I'm the youth coordinator at the Refugee Dream Center. But before I start, I want to share a little bit about my story. I'm a refugee from Congo. Me and my family lived in the refugee camp for 15 years. We were given status to come in the United States, specifically here in Rhode Island in 2015. When I arrived here, I struggled as a young refugee, like any other refugee that come to the United States with English educations and trying to integrate to the American society. I just wanted to graduate high school and be done with it. And because I didn't know much about the American education system, the Refugee Dream Center created a program called the Refugee Youth Dream Program. I joined the program and they gave me a mentor. The mentor gave me confidence I needed in high school as a young refugee, and it helped me succeed in high school. I graduated with full scholarship now at Rhode Island College. After graduating, I wanted to give back to my community. I became a mentor myself at the Refugee Dream Center, now a youth coordinator. I'm so thankful for the mentor, for all the training they have given me as a minister at the Refugee Dream Center, and also making sure that we have all the resources that we need in our program, and also making sure that the youth will succeed throughout the educational journey.
Hi everybody, my name is Mohammed. I am senior in CTA High School. I come from Afghanistan. I came here 2016. When I come here, I didn't speak English and school was very hard. The youth program in the Refugee Dream Center helped me to learn English and become the good student in school. As a senior, the youth program gave me the mentor. He helped me to apply to colleges and scholarship. In this year, I got to 4 colleges with $80,000 scholarship. And the youth program helped my life change as a refugee.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice presentation, I have to say. Questions or comments?
Yeah.
Really was.
Madam Chair, may I make a comment?
Yes, of course you can, Councilor Roy.
Thank you both. Providence is really lucky to have you both here. Knight was my former student at Central High School, and if I could brag about him a little bit, I was a college advisor at the time, and he'd stay with me till 6 p.m. just completing college applications. And we at the same time, it was the year where we were trying to get the Promise Scholarship passed at the state, and so Knight joined many of the students there, and we I believe boarded the bus to the State House, and we testified in support of the Promise Scholarship. And he testified and gave such a just eloquent speech that moved those who were on that committee. And I really believe a star was born that day. And so, Knight, thank you for everything you're doing. And I think, and I'm gonna say this in front of everyone, you have, I'm choking up, I don't know why, hold up now. But, you have given me more than I could ever give to you, and you just light up the room, and what you're doing now, I'm just so proud of you.
Thank you so much.
Do we have to clap after?
So-
Do I have any?
Sorry, that was on my favorite part.
I think
We got it. Thank you so much.
I don't think there's anything else we could say. So I want to thank you so much, both of you, very much for coming and talking to us about your program. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have you finished the presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Ready for questions?
Yes, we would, I think we will open it up for questions, committee members. Yes, Councilor Randall.
Thank you, and thank you so much, and thank you for bringing such amazing representation of the work that you guys do. My questions are mostly about numbers, and I'm still digging in on this, but I guess I'm wondering how much of the initial 1.1 million from the city went to direct programs? 750, and then how did you guys spend the administrative portion? Like how, what did you?
So it's all strewn through, first of all, the original grant was for 12 months and ended up being 18 months.
Okay.
Because just the way the funding is, the cadence, if you will.
Yeah.
So we basically supplied databases for everybody because a lot of the programs are brand new. They don't have any kind of tracking for the mentors and mentees, so over $30,000 went towards that. We're also planning an end of year youth summit / party. $5,000 of the funding is going towards that. And we're able to leverage an additional $25,000 from now in May because I think it's really important for kids in different parts of the city to get together in a safe way and interact. So there's a lot of those kinds of things that were built into that initial budget.
Okay, and how much of that, if you don't mind me, is like just pure overhead for Mentor RI? Like how much just goes to you guys?
It's all going to staffing,
Yeah.
honestly, at this point, because we budgeted, for 1 year and it's 18 months.
Okay.
So it's majority.
So I'm sorry, can I ask a follow-up? So I'm sorry, the 1.1 million, 750 was issued in grants and the rest has been administered.
It's for us to run the program, right? So it's for our staffing. There's $100,000 that was available as a chunk of this money in the RFP that would go towards admin. But at this point, that's all really going towards staffing because of the increased length of the duration of the grant.
Okay, can you talk a little bit about how many you have on staff and what services you provide to your grantees?
Sure. So we have 2 full-time staff members and 100% on this project. When it first started, in addition to additional staff people, because we not only had to design an RFP process, but also implement that, right? Have reviewers and all that and whatnot. We basically meet with our community of practice every month, which also takes probably with 5 hours of prep time. Additionally, we offer technical assistance to each individual program. So as an example, for Vikram's program, whatever he needs, we work one-on-one with him to make sure that he has whatever it is, whether it's knowledge about the elements of effective practice and mentoring, because there is a standard operating procedure for mentoring programs. In Rhode Island, we are the only technical assistance providers for the National Mentoring Resource Center, which is that part of the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention. So we have access to the latest research, best practices, and then teach our programs those things. It's very labor intensive, and even the reports in front of you, trying to get that information from 17 programs can be challenging.
All right, Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Just clarity, so the 120,000 that it looks like went directly for youth stipends, that's included in the 750?
It is. Yeah, that's whatever the program submitted in their budget. That was each program's amount that they showed. And you'll see that there's a rich mix of different types of programs as well.
I did. So the 2 full-time employees were the ones that were dedicated strictly to this program, did all of the interaction with your counterpart organizations and things like that. Those were the only people that were on this?
No, there's percentages of everybody. Really, to be honest with you, we have a mentor recruiter that's working out in the community to try to recruit volunteers, but then we refer out to partner programs. Myself, it's just, it's strewn throughout a large portion of our organization.
Understood. The reason why I'm asking is because roughly your numbers come out to 65% of the total 1.1 was given in grants. And while I understand that it extended an extra 6 months it's still 45% went to administrative. And that is, I would love to have seen more of that money go to the organizations that you're serving.
And it really does go in the form of the technical assistance, in the form of the database, there's a lot of other things. Actually, when you're talking about how wonderful Night was, part of it was scholarships to the National Mentoring Summit, which just happened last week. Night blew the doors off of the Capitol building, I think, in the best possible way. Let me do this back.
He whacked them.
Both Senator Reid and Senator Whitehouse was so enthralled with the presentation of these young people and what they're accomplishing, that, it was just amazing to see. I sort of Washington do that. So there's a lot of other opportunities within that funding as well.
So just a follow-up, this new amount of money that you're requesting, how much is dedicated to organizations and how much is going to be administrative?
So per the RFP, $100,000 of that has to go towards barriers in participation. However, programs identify that, whether that's transportation, basic needs, and those kinds of things. So that 100,000 plus an additional 650 would all go to organizations. So we're keeping the amount going out as at the 750.
At the 750.
Yeah, even though it's a reduced overall amount.
I'm going to move on to Counselor Ingerbaum, and I'll move.
Yeah, okay. And that was actually, most of my question was the 995, the slightly less than $1 million. What would the plans were for that? But it sounds like, is it the same organizations? You're going to go back out for new RFP?
That's a great question. I think it's going to be a combination. I don't know if everybody's going to want to continue or, continue to work that way. And if there's anybody that's not performing, we then assess that. But our initial obviously would be working with the mayor's office to make sure that we're in rhythm with what they're looking for, is to continue funding for the existing programs, perhaps at a little bit of a lesser level, because we don't know in the future what that funding source may look like. As well as perhaps opening that opportunity, because there were quite a few organizations that did not receive grants. I might also add that 2 organizations that didn't get funded still totally participated in everything else, just because they wanted to increase their program practice. So there is value in the community. You're typically to the organizations that we try to value.
May I also, I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
Can you just talk a little bit about your RFP process and walk us through that?
Sure. So the initial RFP process was quite a lengthy application process. We had 3 members of the Metro Rhode Island staff, 3 members of the mayor's office staff were the reviewers for that. And we did hire an outside consultant to keep the process transparent and above board, so that everything like I's dotted, T's crossed, and we can show you the scoring sheets and all of those things. So it became kind of, the city felt very strongly that if a program applied for the funding, they should get the full dollar amount that they were looking for in order to fully implement. And so we kept with those wishes as best possible. There was just a little tiny bit of money left over as a bottom line amount in one of those organizations that said, hey, we really still want to do the community practice. We want to work with you. It was like a $2,500 left over that we did extend to that organization. Basically, the amounts that they applied for was what was granted. And we did, anybody that we had questions on, we did site visits. They were by Zoom, but really the same way you're questioning us, we questioned them. Because there were certain applications that obviously rose to the top. They looked like, yes, this is the work we want to be doing. While others, we had questions we weren't sure about. And so that's part of the vetting process as well.
Okay, yes,
I do
Councilor
have-
Peterson.
Did I not, maybe I misunderstood the last time that you were here and discussing, did you already not have 15 organizations ready to go for this particular $995,000?
If we continue to fund the existing programs, yes, I think it depends on once we ask them what they say. But I've not.
You
asked them.
haven't solicited new RFPs or sent out new RFPs
No,
to?
because I didn't know that, I need you all to give me my 95 before I can do that. I don't have that anywhere else.
Okay, so, all right, so I guess my follow-up is actually in your original request for the 1.1 million. My understanding was that there were 3 bidders, correct? And you guys came and basically you got the grant, or you got the funding. My concern is the way that it was done. And I am privy to a little bit of knowledge because prior to running for office, prior to doing anything, I was actually a grant writer on one of the other requesters. And in a conversation, as any good organization would do when you go and you ask, tell us what we did wrong. It was the people on the Zoom were privy to some information that you perhaps might have engaged in the original, helping the city prepare what the RFP looked like. So I'd like to know if you perchance, have you ever in any way participated in the understanding of what it would be laid out to be procured or anything along those lines?
No, I did consult with the city in the fact that they wanted to do mentoring and had a previous relationship with Diana Perdomo because she was my United Way grant officer. So she was asking me questions about like what's best practices and that kind of thing, but that was the extent of it.
So you knew that there was an RFP that was being prepared?
I knew that there was a possibility that ARPA funding may go towards mentoring. I had no idea that it would ever come to fruition.
That presents a problem for me in that you knew that there was a potential of money coming through and you were actually the winning bid. That to me doesn't sound like it's above surface.
Oh, I'm sorry that you feel that.
Well, while I very much value every single thing that you're doing and it's all of substance and it's unbelievable, the reality is that there could have been other organizations, and if we followed the bidding process as designated, the lowest bidder wasn't even the one that won.
Right, because this wasn't a lowest bid. This was $1.1 million going to one organization to distribute. This was not a lowest bid.
But the RFP request also it specified very specifically that the lowest bidder actually gets the opportunity to have this funding.
That's on the city. I don't know.
Right, so my
Because the
whole,
lowest bidder was what, 540,000 for the.
I wouldn't be able to tell you that. I'm not exactly sure, regardless of what
I
it
watched the
is.
bid openings.
Oh, okay. Regardless of what it is, though, that
Counselor,
still,
finish. If you could, I just want you to speak and then we'll have a response. Thank you.
the reality is that if it wasn't followed properly, I don't necessarily think it's fair for Mentor to receive an additional amount of funding based on the original procurement of these funds. While I do agree that all of the work that is being done is phenomenal, I don't necessarily agree that you should be able to receive an additional amount of funding. And that is, I think we would have to refer back to the original funding request and kind of break down how exactly all of it happened. But my understanding is that if we didn't follow our own process, we shouldn't be able to give additional funding to the original requester that didn't exactly follow the process. That's my concern.
May I just clarify? So thank you so much. So this second tranche, the first RFP, how much was that?
1.1 million.
Okay, and this is an additional amount.
Correct, this would be year 2.5. If you look at it, the first one's 18 months. This is 18 months.
Thank you. And were you the only bidder for the 995?
We were.
Okay. And did you participate in the drafting or any of the RFP process for the 995?
I did not.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that. Okay, all right. City solicitor, do you have any?
I don't have any knowledge of this particular bid. Certainly, if there's concerns, the law department is always willing and able to review it, but this is the first time we're hearing of it. And I typically, and I'm not the attorney in the office who staffs the Board of Contract and Supply, but if it's something that the committee wants the board, the law department to look at, we certainly will.
Thank you. Thank you, Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I too will commend you for the work that you've done so far. I think we've heard the impact and anything to do with young people and impacting their lives so that way they can become productive citizens, as we've already heard and what I pointed out. I have a couple of questions, and it goes in the sense of from the aspect of the transparency and also what I've learned that we have here in the city and through the city council, and so forth, and that is through the contract and supply. We have the RFP process. During the RFP that you were awarded, did you have to, was it part of the RFP to create a RFP process and develop a panel of whom these people are going to be that will make the decision to give the money out?
That was not written in the RFP process. That's what we designed. We've done it once before with federal funding back in 2010 and tried to kind of maintain that same cadence. I think the main difference is last time we had community volunteers doing it. This time it was representatives from the mayor's office because of the fact that it was such a lot of investment. And, you know, obviously we wanted to make sure that we were keeping the fidelity to the programming that they were envisioning.
So it was in addition to an RFP via a directive from the mayor's office
I wouldn't say it was a
to
directive.
develop
I
that
mean,
RFP.
how else am I gonna give out $750,000, I guess? If we- Like, it was just the way we.
And that's good. I mean, that's why I want to know. I mean, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Right.
So no one at that certain point said, hey, we have an RFP process. We should look at that for our city. No one, let's say from the mayor's office or staff would say, hey, we're gonna give out money, but we do have a process in the city that has to go through a RFP process. When we give
For
out
our
money,
sub-grants, you mean?
for money that,
Well, we
Yeah,
applied for what was posted on the mayor's website.
I'm sorry?
The RFP that we applied for was posted on the website.
Yes, but in addition to that, in terms of, you know, you had some directive from the mayor's office. Right.
Well,
How to give
I
out
think
the
it was
money.
more of a partnership. I wouldn't call it a directive. I think that it's a large investment, wanting to make sure that we're doing the best possible for the city of Providence. I think it's a partnership, not a directive.
Okay,
If
well,
that's-
partnership, okay.
yeah, if that's-
Well, all right. We'll talk about that.
Nobody told me
I'll
what to
strike the
do.
language,
Okay, hold on just a minute.
Madam, if I may.
If we may have the question and then please wait until he finishes so we can have not two people talking at once. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll strike that language into the directive on home partnership. So. I'll come back to it if you don't mind.
I have another question for the solicitor. So if we, the question is about the original allocation of 1.1 million. So if that's already been awarded and already used and distributed, what are our rights if we want to look at that then? Is it too late or what is, because really what we're talking about at this point, my understanding is based on Councilor Peterson's, is that she has a question regarding the original disbursement, the original award that was awarded, the 1.1, not necessarily this 995. So I just am asking you if at this
Based
point.
upon what I've heard, I don't believe you have the ability to go back on the first award. I think, to be a little cliche, that ship has sailed, so to speak. I think we've moved on and we're beyond that. I think it would be different if we were here on that first award and the allegation came up.
Right.
Okay, all right. Councilor Peterson.
Just as a follow-up to that, then, while there's clearly nothing that we can do based on that, I do make a recommendation of, based on these 995 that we have, that we're working with, I would hope that we actually increase the amount that we're giving to organizations above the 750. I mean, I don't even know if this is actually a possibility, but I would actually request a rebid on all this. I'm not part of this, I'm not part of the committee, but I would make a recommendation to, if there isn't any way to offer these organizations, however this pans out, an opportunity to rebid, to be able to have more organizations be a part of that bidding process, just in an effort to be equitable and fair. just because I don't necessarily, I feel very strongly that because that process wasn't followed in best practice the first time, it should be redone at the very least for a little bit of indication on our part.
So that would be a question for me.
Sorry.
And us,
And
as the finance committee. So we very much can refer back for rebid, I believe. Now I'm going to consult with my auditor.
I believe the motion would be to deny it and recommend it be rebid.
Okay, should the committee choose to do that, I appreciate your participation. And I'm going to ask if anyone else has any questions. Sorry, Madam Auditor.
One comment, which is really concerning, pricing should never be on an RFP. Pricing should never be on an RFP. We want competition, we want them to bid. Maybe she would have bid $1 million, you would have gotten the same services. I don't know how that was. I know you have this, it's kind of a little confused with the whole NOFA process, but pricing should not be. We want competitive bidding, we want them to compete with each other. So that is why pricing should never be on bid. Anyone who sees that should be disqualified. It just, it's the city process, it's just really not good practice. It's, I don't know, solicit up.
I don't know if, in fact, if you deny it, that's the basis to rebid. That's not my expertise. Certainly, I will get an answer for the committee.
No, I'm saying in general. I think there's other bids that they take, they tell them, okay, here's $3 million, tell me what you're gonna do with it.
Yeah.
Solicitor, do you have a response? I'm trying to make sure that we're not having a conversation that.
Madam Chair, I don't
recognize.
have an answer. It does sound a bit of an anomaly. It's not what we typically see.
So my understanding, I'm just gonna say, is that is this done through the NOFA process?
This was done through an RFP process with one bidder responding, which is also concerning. Why was there only one bidder? Why didn't they love the recommended bidders?
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I'm gonna have pro temp. We're ready.
Thank you, and that's where I was going when I lost my. So, again, I think it's not unmentor right. I think it's just more of a process. For me, and this is our third week on the job. And one thing that I've heard clearly is that we do have an RFP process, and we would like everyone to go through that process, especially going on money. I think it was concerning when we first heard it that there was a statement indicating, well, it was just a pass-through, that it's federal money. And I've learned over time that even though it's a pass-through, we're still held accountable as city government. So every money that comes through this city of Providence is accountability. And we, in finance, have to hold, like they hold us accountable, we have to hold accountable this process. And the most transparency way that I've learned so far is to use the city's contract and supply RFP process. And what I'm suggesting is along the line of the conversation is that in some ways is that we go back and put another RFP where you're welcome and others to compete on it. Maybe you'll be the sole bidder and so forth. I also have learned that it's great to have competitive bids. But at this time, I can see that you've done a good work and some other organization may be but reluctant to spend some energy and time and money to rebid for the money. But I think it's also for us to hold people accountable. Lastly is that while in going forward in the future is that I see the reports to the mayor and so forth, whomever is mayor, I think that the body of the city council should also be reported to in terms when it comes to dollars. So for future RFPs and organization is that they're sending information and reports to the mayor. I think that it's also adequate and appropriate to send it to city council. So
All right, Councilor Anderson.
Can I say a quick follow-up to that? Because you mentioned board of contract and supply, but I thought, I mean, this might be a question for you, Brett. Like, did it go through contract and supply? Because you said that you heard like who all the bidders were. So it sounds like it actually did go through that process, right?
Yes, it's
Okay.
non-finance meetings, it was talked about actively with all of the organizations on this call.
Okay, that was just a clarifying.
All right, pro tem?
Yeah, it's just more of getting the clarification of the additional money that's being doled out to other organizations. Right, because there was a question, I mean, Madam Chair, there was a question of who was getting the email or notification to apply for this money.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So how was that done? And so there was still a questionable whether, hey, if you're on this list, you got that email. Well, if you were not in someone's radar, they don't participate, they won't even have the opportunity to participate. That's all.
I think I figured.
Okay, any more questions, comments?
Um,
Counselor Sanchez?
Thank you, Chairwoman. I don't know if this would be for the auditor, can you just, for people listening, can you just quickly explain, this RFP, like the current one that we're on, and why maybe there's only one bidder, or?
Madam Auditor?
First of all, the reason it came to your committee is because it exceeds $500,000. It was an award for the Board of Contract and Supply that went through the RFP process. Why there is only one bidder, I have no idea, especially when you have 3 bidders on a similar bid 18 months ago. I can't answer that question. That would be a question for purchasing. I don't know how they're soliciting their bids. I don't know if they give recommended bidders.
Thank you, Madam Auditor. Okay, committee members, we have a decision to make. You know what our options are, and I'm going to ask for a motion.
Question.
Yes.
Again, just for clarification, this 995 already went through the RFP process. Only one was submitted and Mentor like that, correct?
That's correct.
So with going forward, and as far as a motion, would the selectee, Mentor be willing to also put the money's being doled out to an RFP?
We cannot, that is not before us. So what is before us is to actually approve, a motion to approve or deny, and we can, in our denial, we would be requesting that Mentor RI, that the bid process, that the rebid, this contract would be rebid, but we can't put requirements in the RFP. So I'm sorry to say that this contract would be just go back, rebid, then it may be that we're sitting here again with Mentor RI, because you may be the only bidder. So that's where we are with this decision. Okay. All right, so motion.
Why is everybody looking at me?
You don't have to.
Okay, now I'll make a motion that we deny number 1 and send it back to an RFP and see what happens.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Yeah, but what is the motion?
Deny.
Motion to deny.
The motion is to deny. It was made by Counselor Taylor, seconded by Counselor Sanchez. The denial would basically be no, and that this will be sent back for review. All in favor of the denial?
Aye.
Okay, all opposed? Fine. So the motion to deny passes. 3. 1 abstain for Counselor Randall.
What was that?
I did not vote.
You're not voting and councilors abstaining?
She's abstaining and I said, no, I don't support that. I'm a nay.
Okay.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much. We really, I think, as I listened to this, I think everyone believes in what has been done, and we may be seeing you shortly. I think there's just a question about the process and so we'll
Item number 2. Communication from His Honor the Mayor dated January 6, 2023, informing the honorable members of the City Council that pursuant to sections 302B and 1013 of the Providence Home Rule Charter of 1980, as amended in Public Law, Chapter 45-50, Sections 1 through 31, passed in 1987, he is this day reappointing Michael Gazaco of 78 Harrison Street, Providence, Rhode Island, 02909, as a general citizenry category member of the City Plan Commission for a term to expire on January 31st, 2028, and respectfully submits the same for your approval.
Please come forward, we'll swear you in.
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear as a penalty of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and address for me.
Michael Gazdaco, 78 Harrison Street.
Thank you so much for coming. I understand why you weren't able to join us last
Yes, I
time.
apologize for not being able to make it last week, but we had a city plan commission meeting as well.
And you are currently chairing.
I am, yes.
Okay, well, thank you so much for coming. If you could just give the committee just a brief little statement about your background.
I've been in all different types of property management, property construction, redevelopment, everything from historic rehabilitation, environmental remediation, building depth at Reeves. Before that, I did a little bit of non-related property related things. Like I worked in the movie industry for a couple of years in Los Angeles. I ran for office in 2016, unsuccessfully, and I'm actually very thankful for that. And thankful for what you guys do, because I know what it's like, and I think everyone should run for office at some point in their life. Because it gives a whole new level of respect for our elected officials and what they do on a daily basis and what they have to do to become elected. But I also own a couple of properties. I'm trying to actually develop the property next to me on Harrison Street. We also want to make a lot. And eventually we'll build a house there. It's a historic district. So I also had to go through the HDC process, which is not my purview, the planning board. And that's where we're probably going to move at some point with my daughter. Maybe a little bit more room with a free family now on Harrison Street. So next door might give us a little bit more room. But yeah, a little bit of everything.
How long have you served on the CPC?
I was first appointed in 2014. I stepped off when I ran for office. So I was off for about a year, and then I was reappointed. So I've been on since then, so 2017 until now. I was the vice chair from 2018 until this past January. And when Christine West left the commission, I was elected chair. I've been chair since. I was just re-elected chair this last meeting last week.
Congratulations. Thank you. And if you wouldn't mind, we have new counselors. We have new counselors who might like just a little explanation of what the city plan commission does. I know, in 2 seconds or less. No. You know, just in general, I think that you know, if you could just if you could just say what your committee, what your responsibilities are as a city plan commission, that would help.
Okay, so the broad overview of it is that we are the public planning arm of the city. People come before us with planning projects, the master plan, either minor or major land development projects. And we hear them based on the merits of the case and what current zoning and comprehensive plan is as written. We render judgment, give them master plan, preliminary plan, final plan approval. We also hear institutional master plans. That's under our purview as well. We also do, there are a lot of recommendations that come before the city council. Those are usually forwarded to us when they're land use matters, zoning changes specifically come before us. We review them, we hear from the applicants, and then we give a recommendation to the city council. What we think is best with best planning practices would be the render judgment for yourself. Sorry. Also, there's a big upcoming heavy lift, which is we're charged with the comprehensive plan updates to help that process through, and that's something that we'll be starting over the next 18 months. It's going to be a pretty heavy lift with hopefully all of your input and help, because you guys make the laws that we follow, and you give us the tools to help implement whatever you want to see built and how and what it looks like. You're the keys to all of that.
And so there's also, I'm sorry, one more, and then I'm going to open it up for questions. Not all the decisions that you make, and again, this is for education for our new council members, but not all decisions that you make come before the council for approval.
That is correct.
Can you just talk a little bit about that?
So normal land development projects that don't need zone changes or things like that are properly zoned, that are either minor or major land development projects. That's just the state process of going through the land development review. I believe that is state law in each city and town throughout the state. Promulgates the ordinances that show the land development process. So if there's an apartment building that wants to be built on a lot, not in the downtown area, that's a separate board, but anywhere else in the city, except for the 195 land, that's not awesome. It would come before us, and we would do the land development process separate and apart from city council, because it has to be, we have to make certain findings, consistency with the comprehensive plan, zoning, and we have to make some other findings throughout the process as well.
And then one final thing, I'm asking a ton of questions, but sorry, less about you and more about the process.
Yes.
I'm just using, frankly, I'm just using you as an education tool.
Yeah.
And then you have some discretion in terms of, can you talk a little bit about waivers and things like that?
So we do, we have, there are certain mostly design and dimensional waivers that we are able to implement, which allow a certain latitude to get a project developed. If, say, an applicant gives ground floor commercial or structured parking, we're able to give a certain height variance, or if there are certain things, they're all written into the development review plan and guidelines, and they're laid out. But we do have some latitude in what we're able to do. But we do have to make findings that stand up. And one of my goals as chair is to make findings that will stand up, even if appealed, or if someone doesn't like the decision, because we would have to defend those as a city if they were appealed to the ZBA and then to the Superior Court. I don't want our decisions to be found legally unsound.
Okay, at that point, I will open up for questions, committee members. Yes, Councilor.
Yes. Thank you, Chairwoman, and thank you, Michael, for being here and for serving on the City Plan Commission. I have a few questions. Some are like super easy. One is, what is the attendance? What is the frequency of your meeting, and what is your attendance been like for this week?
So we meet at least once a month. There are often times where we have to schedule special meetings because we have too many matters on the docket, and we know that things are going to stack up. For example, in November, we had zoning petitions in front of us for review that we need to get back to the city council. They just kept stacking up because we had too many land development projects in front of us. So we had a regular meeting and then we had a special meeting in November just to clear our docket of these city council reforms. But normally it's one meeting a month. I have a feeling that's going to ramp up because we're going to be having special meetings, and we'll probably have some committees for the comprehensive plan updates and some amendments and things like that. It's normally once a month. Attendance is difficult. It's hard to find people who are interested and engaged and are able to meet every week. So attendance is something that we look at very closely. We try to make sure we know who's going to come and who's going to be there, because we don't want to waste anyone's time if we don't have a forum or things like that.
Thank you.
Yes, go right ahead, Councilor.
For the comprehensive plan pieces, I should say, I have testified in front of the CPC before, so it's audio. I know a little bit, but not a ton. I don't think you were at that meeting, but it may have been while you were not still on. For the comprehensive plan updates, what are you seeing as the CPC's role in that, in relation to like what the planning department will be doing, what will you be doing? Like, how do you see your role in that process?
It's yet to be determined how exactly we will be participating in this. I hope that we're used as a tool because over the past, it's been almost 10 years since the comp plan has been updated.
Yeah.
We consistently have recommendations and things that we consistently see that are impediments to development that we see time and time again. Like recently, you guys just took up the R4 zoning amendments, and we really appreciate that because for so long we've been seeing people that want to develop multifamily residential, and they've been doing zone changes instead of keeping them in a residential zone because there was no residential zone that allowed for it.
Yeah.
They would move it to a C2 zone with a residential footnote. So it wasn't really properly zoned.
Yeah.
We were making it a commercial zone, but for residential only. Whereas the R4 zone will fix that and be able to have the appropriate zoning with the appropriate residential setbacks in certain areas. So we'll still have to follow the same setbacks in the R4 zone, but they'll allow more density and height and things like that.
Okay. Thank you. That's really helpful. And then my last question.
Yes, go right ahead.
Is, I guess, as part of also the comp plan. So when I testified in front of the CPC a couple of years ago, it was around changes to the comp plan. To be honest, they didn't get approved, but changes to the comp plan that dealt with the city's climate justice plan. And a frustration I had at that moment was there was at least one member of the CPC who did not believe in climate change and expressed that during the meeting, which was a concern. So I'm wondering if you're finding other gaps in knowledge, or as you're adding new members, it sounds like there's been some turnover. I guess that's the question. Like,
I've not heard any current members
Okay.
deny climate change. In fact, just the opposite.
That's good to hear.
You know, there was a statewide planning tool that all planning boards had to take at some point, it was 2 or 3 years ago. And it talked about climate change and the impact to developable lots throughout the state. And there was this really great interactive map that was shown, and it's a great tool that municipalities are able to use. The planning department has access to it.
And do you
So,
guys use that regularly in your meetings?
not in the meetings regularly, but in review of how we want to structure land use going forward.
Awesome. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Committee members, yes, Councilor
Thank you.
Sanchez.
Thank you, Michael, for stepping up and going to serve the city. It seems like you've been doing it for quite some time. So thank you for that. One question, do you have an opinion on parking minimums?
So it's kind of a double-edged sword. There are some people who believe that we need a certain amount of parking. And I think in certain parking zones, in certain areas, parking minimums are arbitrary because there's plenty of public transportation, like the downtown. Parking minimums aren't really necessary. It's not me to decide what's allowed or what's not. It's in front of us in black and white what parking minimums and maximums are. We're allowed to give certain relief to certain projects, which we do from time to time. I think an overparked city is actually probably detrimental to growth because we have a lot of surface lots. We dedicate a lot to parking and asphalt, and that's just as bad as anything else. You have more landscape, more trees, more or developed parcels as well. We need more density. Obviously, we have a housing shortage at all levels of the housing spectrum, and I think the impediments to development are pretty high in this region in general. So anything to help growth, I think is a good thing, but that's not my decision to make. That's yours, and then I am doing that.
No, I appreciate that.
Yes, go ahead, Councilor.
Yeah, actually went back and heard your meeting last week, and you seem like someone that is very conscious of the law that's in front of you, but at the same time, you understand our current elements of society and the need specifically to housing. So it seems like the committee, from what I've seen, just in a very brief time, is willing to work with folks in making sure that if it's something as minimal as a variance on a dimension of a lot, that you're willing to work with folks, and I appreciate that. I think that's something that everyone that's working with the city kind of needs to get along. There's just going off quickly. I mean, we're not completely zoning. We have a zoning board, but there's a push at the state level to kind of get involved with local zoning in terms of municipalities, and we're seeing it in some of our rural communities. Without even seeing the legislation, they're already pushing back. So that's kind of scary seeing that. So I'm very happy that we have the opposite here in Providence. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm actually quite interested to see that the committees that Tom Deller specifically is heading up at the state level, what they send as recommendations to the State House, which could form what we end up doing in our next zoning and comprehensive plan changes, because state law governs what we adopt, and that may make a big difference. So I believe they're supposed to report out in the next 2 months their recommendations to the speaker, and I'm just kind of waiting with bated breath on that. See what happens, because there will be implications for Providence.
Questions? Yes, yes.
Along those lines, so who's participating and giving up input?
So I know that Bob Azar has been an active participant, and he's been working with Tom Deller quite a bit. He spoke at quite a few of their sessions. And actually at the kickoff of our last meeting, I asked him to give an update on this specifically. And he said that he's confident that the committee will impart Providence's desires and unique characteristics, because we are a big part of this state, and hopefully they listen. But yeah, we do have an ally in those discussions, not directly a part of it, but he's advocating for us.
I just wanted to know what you thought. So there's always that delicate balance between development and neighborhood interest. And I just want to know what your perspective is. Is there a good balance on the current composition of the CPC?
I think so. Again, we're only able to render judgment based on what we have in black and white. So there are times where, while we don't agree 100% with what we have to do, we know we have to follow a certain path. Otherwise, we will be setting ourselves up for litigation. There have been quite a few instances where we think there should be changes made to the zoning maps, zoning amendments, or comp plan changes that would clearly articulate the desires of certain constituents that would help us do our job a little bit better. But it is a delicate balance. There are property owners' rights versus neighborhood rights. They're oftentimes not aligned. Now there have been many examples that we've seen where proper community engagement helps overcome a lot of that, because usually it's a lack of knowledge or transparency about what is happening that causes a lot of public outrage and uproar. And I've seen a lot of examples of how public engagement goes very well, and I've seen a lot of examples of how a developer or representative of a developer does the absolute wrong thing, and it could be so easy for them that they kind of just botched it in the public engagement process.
Thank you. Great, and I have to thank you for your service.
Thank you.
I think it's been a occasion for your
You're in front of us
mission
quite often.
quite often. So I have to say I have firsthand knowledge that we appreciate your service.
And I do have to correct the councilman. We do act as the zoning board occasionally. When there's a land development project, there's a state law that allows unified development plan review to aid in the development process, instead of having an applicant go to the planning board, then to the zoning board, and then back to the planning board. State law allows us, and we've adopted as a city, unified development plan review, which allows us to act as the planning board and the zoning board. So we consider both occasionally when there requires dimensional adjustments or zoning variances that would normally be the purview of the zoning board.
Thank you.
Any more questions? You have a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve Michael Kadzako. Is that okay?
Yes.
The Rosary Plan Commission.
Okay, motion made by Councilor Amberlaw, second by Councilor Sanchez, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for coming. Hey, Madam Clerk, please read the next item.
Item number 3, communication from His Honor the Mayor dated January 11, 2023, informing the honorary members of the City Council that pursuant to sections 302B and C 603 of the Providence Home Rule Charter of 1980, has amended and public law chapter 45-50, sections 1 through 31, passed in 1987. He is this day reappointing Jeffrey Dana of 494 Lloyd Avenue, Providence, Rhode Island, 02906, to the position of City Solicitor and respectfully submits the same for your approval.
Thank you so much for coming, Mr. Solicitor.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, council members, fellow city colleagues.
And do we need to swear in Mr. Dana? Madam Clerk?
Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury and that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Please state your full name and your position for the record.
Jeffrey Dana, City Solicitor.
And if you wouldn't mind giving just a brief bio of
Okay.
yourself.
Sure. So I'm a Rhode Island native. I spent the 10 years after high school outside of Rhode Island. I did my undergraduate work at Tulane University, spent a year studying in England, got my law degree from Tulane Law School. After law school, I worked for a little over 2 years in Buenos Aires, Argentina. When I returned back to the US, I settled in Providence, where I've been for over 2 decades now. I spent nearly 9 years as an attorney at Rhode Island Legal Services, where my primary focus was representing clients and client groups, tenants' rights and consumer rights cases. I then worked as career law clerk for U.S. bankruptcy judge Bodorato. And after that, spent some time in private practice focusing on consumer rights litigation and consumer bankruptcy before I became city solicitor. And I've had the honor and the privilege of spending the last 8 years as a member of the law department.
Thank you. And I'm going to take a pause because I think we have a letter to mark as an exhibit. I'm sorry, it's underneath this big pile of papers we assembled. But we have a letter from the Attorney General in support of your reappointment. And so I'd like to mark that as item number 3. May I have a motion? Okay, the motion was made by Pro Tem, seconded by Councilor Sanchez. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Madam Chair, I just want to point out for the record that although they're not here to testify, a number of staff members from the law department are here. Should the committee have any questions that need testimony, if they do. So there's a bunch of attorneys as well as support staff here in support of Mr. Dana's nomination.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. Thank you so much. Yes, Councilor Sanchez. Yes, could you all stand up who's here? Well, support, but I think that's everyone. Including those of you who are not in the city solicitor's office. And we have a few attendees.
You have Megan DeSanto also online, who was unable to be here with due to childcare issues. So
I'd like to thank you all for your service to the city because you all have been before us in various capacities. And I really thank you very much. 13, we have. Okay.
and I'm also here in support of Mr. Dana's nomination.
Is there one here?
No worries, no worries. Okay, now I'm going to open it up for questions from the committee. Would anyone like to start? And our guest. Councilor Right.
I would love to, and Madam Chair, feel free if I'm monopolizing time here.
Okay, well, we may take a break from your questions. Go to someone else and then we can come back to you.
Jeffrey, thank you for being here. I do have some questions, and I just want to start with they're associated with the Harrisburg Associates versus the City of Providence case. And so much of my questions are come from the publicly available information. And I want to give credit to Steve Alkowitz from Uprise, Rhode Island. So I prepared some remarks, and so I you know, in this case, the Harrisburg Associates versus City of Providence, the city reached an agreement through the 8 law, which saved millionaire Buff Chase 30 million on his property taxes over the next 30 years. We know that under the agreement, 10 properties were converted from TSAs to the 8 law. We know that when the 8 law agreement is reached through RI housing, a tax break would typically only be applied to residential units for as long as 25% of those units are geared towards workforce housing, affordable housing based on the AMR. However, in this agreement, it appeared that the city struck a deal with Buff Chase, and commercial spaces of those properties, among its 10 properties, were included and subjected to a tax break. I want to just stop there for a second and ask you, any of what I said that was reported on inaccurate or a misrepresentation of what had occurred?
Well, there's no, first of all, I think we have to be careful about talking about litigation. Hasn't been noticed on the agenda. And typically, if a member of the law department is going to discuss and answer questions about litigation, we recommend that, if appropriate, to be noticed for executive session, which is not the case in this agenda. We do not go into executive session. So I think I really need to defer on that and not start engaging in discussing specific questions about litigation.
What I might suggest for my counsel, if I may, I'm so sorry, is if you have general questions about the way things are handled, like maybe tax abatements or general questions about procedures and things like that, I think that would probably won't be the more appropriate, if that makes sense to your bidding process. Is anything that isn't specific to a case that you might like to explore. I'm just going to add that.
Sure. Okay.
Do you want to follow up on some?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now or later?
We can do it later. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. We'll come back to Councilor Sanchez.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff, for being here in front of us and willing to serve the city in this very important role. I just want to go on the record and state that the system that we have here in Providence specifically is it's not the most perfect in the sense of our council represents both the administration and the city council. So when there is disagreement on whatever subject, it kind of gets messy, and that's kind of what we've seen in the past. But I will say that the other solution or the other alternative is if we had our own legal and the mayor's office had their own legal, then we would have those disagreements in court. That would be possibly the taxpayers at the end of the day. That's a big responsibility of this committee is to protect taxpayers at all costs. So that's a responsibility I'll always have in the forefront. But with that being said, I know sometimes like how do you in your professional role kind of navigate if there's differences on both legislative chamber or legislative chamber in the administration? Like what's your role in that?
Sure. Let me like pull out and get like at 10,000 feet before I get down to that level. The law department is essentially the law firm for the city government. So we
We are the legal counsel for the entire city government as a body. And the city has a lot of legal matters that we need to attend to. So we have our team, and we function, operate as a team unit, includes 29 staff members. We have 19 attorneys and 10 non-attorney members of the team. We handle a very wide range of matters. The city gets sued a lot, and so we defend the city in lawsuits. We represent the city in affirmative litigation, enforcing the city's rights in any number of matters. We handle labor relations matters. We negotiate collective bargaining agreements. The city has a few thousand employees, many of whom are unionized, so there are also grievances that we handle. We review contracts and sign off on contracts the city enters into with other parties. We prosecute in a wide range of venues: housing court, board of licenses, district court, municipal court. We also handle zoning matters. We handle tax appeals. We staff every single city board and commission, as well as all council committees. We advise to ensure that the city complies with Access to Public Record Act requests. The city receives more APRA requests than just about any public entity in the state. We advise all public bodies that function for the city to comply with Open Meetings Act. We engage in legislative and administrative advocacy. We help draft ordinances, state statutes. There's a whole wide range of things. So when we do that on behalf of the city government as a unit, we very much view ourselves as an in-house law firm for the city. And it is, I think I've discussed this with some of you, that it can get messy or complicated at times when you have a legislative body and an executive branch that aren't, if they're not collaborating on certain things effectively, to be the lawyer for all of them together. But it is by far, I haven't done empirical research, so I don't know statistically, but we are very involved and engaged with the International Municipal Lawyers Association and have developed professional relationships with colleagues throughout the country. And at least anecdotally, it is by far the most common way to provide legal counsel to county government and municipal governments, is to have one unified legal counsel for the entity. To some extent, if you don't, it can create the problem that you identified, Councilman Sanchez, where you could, what happens if the legislative council disagrees with the council to the administration? You're just going to run to court constantly to figure out who's right. It would be very messy and inefficient. But how we handle it is we view our role as to provide the best legal advice and counsel we possibly can. And when a question is posed to us, we do the legal analysis and try to give the right answer. As lawyers, and many of the lawyers in the department have experience in other representing private practice or for other public entities or the nonprofit world. We're used to clients not always loving our advice, our opinions. So whether it be the administration or a board or commission or the council, there's plenty of times where we do our legal research, do our analysis, and come to a conclusion that we think is the best advice, and it's not welcome. It's not, folks don't always enjoy the advice we give or like it. But that's something that as a lawyer you have to get comfortable with. And I think that any client, if they love the advice that a lawyer gives all the time, probably needs to get a new lawyer, because there's times where the lawyer has to help put the brakes on things. But we, to the best of our ability, try to stay out of the fray of whatever disputes might be happening between the branches of government, so that we can just focus on giving the best advice we can. And I will say, I'm going to give a plug to the department, because I think we practice before every court in the state.
I guarantee you, if you survey judges throughout all the courts, as well as members of the legal profession here in Rhode Island, they will tell you that the attorneys in the Providence Law Department are superb. They have an excellent reputation for both being talented lawyers, ethical and professional. We really do have a superb reputation, and we're at the point where whenever we post a job opening, applicants, I always want to know why are people applying here? We don't exactly pay that well. They frequently say they've been referred. Judges recommend young attorneys apply to our department, other attorneys, because they have a great deal of respect for the work that's done in our department. That may be a lengthy answer, but I think that kind of comprehensive understanding of at least how we view our role within city government can be helpful.
Yes, do you want to do a follow-up question, Counselor Sanchez?
Yeah, it's different.
It's okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so first of all, my apologies for not acknowledging the staff. You guys are definitely the bread and butter of the department. And it seems like Jeff has been managing you guys all to good above standards for the city. And it's public service as well. You guys are all doing the work of the people at the end of the day. We appreciate that. My next question is in regards to hiring outside counsel, Jeff. When we hire outside counsel, who makes that decision?
Though, at the end of the day, myself. So per the charter, the city solicitor decides to hire outside counsel to serve the city's legal interests.
And
go ahead.
Do you have a process, or does a certain issue have to meet certain metrics for you to do that, or where do you get your judgment to do that?
Sure. So our focus, I mean, we've really tried to limit as much as possible the need to utilize outside counsel because it's more costly than using our in-house attorneys. So fortunately, because of just the work ethic and the hard work of the attorneys in the department, we tend not to have to utilize outside counsel because of too much volume. We utilize outside counsel predominantly for two reasons: either subject matter expertise that we just don't really have in-house, or if there are potential conflict issues where we think it's best to utilize outside counsel because there either is an apparent conflict or we anticipate a potential conflict.
May I just do a follow-up question on that? And then in terms of cost of that, do you have do you have a line item budget? Do you have a
Yes.
budget set for you, and how do you set that budget every year? How do you know?
Well, it's been pretty much at the same amount roughly for the last several years. I mean, I guess finance would might remember whether that's accurate or not, but looking through it, there has been very little change in what the budget for that line item has been over the last several years. And going over the last decade or so, it's been pretty consistent, the spending, except for a couple, the highest amounts were several years ago when there was a lot of cost for litigating the opt-out litigation, which was pension litigation. That resulted from the consent agreement that Mayor Tavares' administration reached with a bunch of retirees, and several dozen of them opted out, and it went up and back and forth through the courts.
All right, and we have Counselor Tim.
So I'm gonna roll back to piggyback on a few of these questions. Do you see a conflict? Because in the charter change, I put a change in that we should have, the council should have their own representation. Unfortunately, the charter didn't see it that way and shot it down. So do you see a conflict between representing the mayor and the council?
No, because we don't view ourselves as representing the council or the mayor. We're very clear that we are not the mayor's attorney. We are not the council's attorney. We are the city government's attorney. So we do not technically represent any individual
The
members.
reason I mention that is because last 4 years, the laws administration, which I keep my comments to myself about the laws administration because I wasn't too proud of that. But we had one of our council people got jacked up, if you want to say it, and he felt he couldn't get represented by the city council, by your administration, because it was basically, it was administration, it was kind of battle between the two. And he had to go get his own lawyer, and I don't know who paid for it at the end, but the case got dropped. But I'm just saying that as council people and administration, I'm talking about the last administration, it seemed like everything that we were trying to do, the administration knew, whether it came from city solicitors or wherever, but it just seemed that we're on the same board. I don't think that's fair to the council people. If something happens to them, they should be able to feel safe, if you want to call it, or have a lawyer that feel they can represent that person instead of running back to the administration and telling them. I guess that's what my question says. Because you don't see it as a conflict. That's
No,
all.
I'm recalling, I mean, I think I know what you're referring to, when I believe at the request of the then council president, we, as we do occasionally, requested some guidance from Supreme Court's disciplinary council to help us work through potential conflict issues, and we provided guidance to the then council president that it would be appropriate for the council to assist with the hiring of outside counsel for that council member, because we were charged under the charter with representing the body to which the complaint was filed against the council person, and we're also required under the city ordinance to be the investigative entity. So I view that much less as any kind of council administration issue, as the combination of charter and ordinance had us wearing 3 different hats in the same scenario.
I'm just going to follow up on a few more.
Yes, please.
So you mentioned about the outside counsel. Do you know, say in the last 4 years, or let's say a year, do you know how many outside counsel we've hired and what was that cost? Just following up on both of there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the number off the top of my head of exactly how many outside counsel, but I know that except for the immediate last fiscal year, we have been within our budget line item, which was 1.3 or 1.4 million in each of the years. During the last fiscal year, we went to 1.5 million is what the expenditure was. And again, I will depend more on finance to make sure this is all very accurate. But my recollection is that a large chunk of last year's fees not classified, which is the budget line item expenditure, was for an expert that was hired via bid process for contract and supply, because it wasn't an attorney. It's not an attorney that the city needed to assist in its litigation with both Dominion and not National Grid now, what they're called now. And that was a very expensive item that's paid for via the water department's budget.
Can I ask?
Councilor Chairman, go ahead.
Can I ask the internal auditor, does she have any numbers like to know that where we stand as far as in line with that?
Had a budget of 1.4 million, Larry, Sarah, I believe it's 1.4 million. Miscellaneous. I believe that's what it is. Fiscal year 22, they were at 2.2 million. Fiscal year 21, 1.6 was in budget within all the other years. 2016, 2.2. This year, you're already at 1.1, and that was for 6 months.
So I guess, do we have any explanation of that? Because as a finance committee, we come in here and we try to keep the police and fire with their overtime, I guess, within budget, which I know fire is over again, but, is there any explanation?
Well, I mean, I guess I'd have to, have asked finance and the auditor to reconcile numbers. I have the numbers that we get provided from finance. And for our fiscal 2021 actual fees not classified, we have 1.5 million, 1,506,000, which is 100,000 over budget.
And I guess I go back to the question, is it because we're hiring outside lawyers? I mean, we got
Well, that's what
15 here.
that's what the line item is for.
How many we need?
That's what the line item is for. And then the prior year, I mean, in 2012, 1.9 million was spent on outside counsel. I mean, I think we've been keeping it at an amount that's fairly consistent with some variation over the last decade. We try to be very careful with what our expenditures are. There are circumstances in which, so as attorneys, we have a professional obligation to represent our client to the best of our ability. And there are certain matters, certain circumstances in which we just don't have the appropriate expertise in-house. So we don't feel we'd be fulfilling our responsibility to the city, to our client, if we didn't utilize outside counsel. We're often, certainly when we're battling with certain larger entities, they're using experienced subject matter expertise counsel, and we don't feel it's appropriate for the city to not have the same firepower. And then for situations where we're concerned about potential conflict issues, I mean, that's the license of all the attorneys in this office to ensure that we don't violate any conflicts rules. Where we're not going to do that. So we need to go utilize outside counsel when we're concerned about any potential conflicts. So those are the main reasons why we would utilize outside counsel. I will note that we get, we are fortunate that attorneys, private law firms and attorneys that we utilize grant us a discount from lower hourly rates than they charge private clients. They're not doing this work pro bono, but it's somewhat of a public service, and that they're representing the city at reduced fees.
Council Taylor.
There's a few issues I had last term that you were involved with. One of them was because conduit, if you remember, came through with the tickets. And my buddy, the commissioner there, signed the contract without going through the board of contracts. And we brought it up to you at that time because it was we denied it actually in the finance meeting because it didn't go through the proper process. But at that point in time, this is where I asked about, is there a conflict? Because we denied it, but you went with the administration and said there was nothing wrong. And clearly there was something wrong because even the commissioner knew we did wrong. And then he went and did it again. And we had to have the treasurer at that time, I believe, it, correct me if I'm wrong, he had to hold up the check to pay the thing. So that's my concern when you say you represent both, but we clearly as a finance committee denied it. And then we were looking for you as, what do we do with it? And you were kind of like, no answer. You went with the commissioner, in my opinion.
Well, first of all, I mean, with conduit, there's a lot to unpack. There's multiple contracts and amendments to that. I do recall that a portion that came to the finance committee, the request was to renegotiate a portion, which we did, and resulted in terms that the finance committee voted on and approved.
But I guess, just interrupt quick, but I guess at the time, did you think the commissioner had the power to sign that contract himself?
I can't go back and remember I can't recall exactly every thing that happened with conduit, but I can tell you that we don't, the law department doesn't go, just kind of say, okay, go with any individual. We review whatever the facts of the situation are, analyze the applicable law, and give a conclusion that we think is the right legal answer. We don't give our conclusions based on who's asking the question. We just give what we think is the right legal answer. And we're aware there are times where what we believe the correct legal answer is gonna make some folks upset with us. But we can't like change our opinion or modify what we think the right answer is based on that. There are times when we just have to accept that some folks are gonna be upset with us.
I understand you're gonna be upset on either, but I mean, we just laugh on it, I promise. We just had one, 4 or 5 months ago, that we were in and I voted no to pay a certain person amount of money. And you like reduce their payment and there was nothing to show for it. And that's why I was asking. In other words, we owe them X. So you want us to pay Y, which is a lot cheaper. And how are we doing this? And unfortunately, the committee at that time voted for it and then paid for it within 30 days. Like, we've got outstanding, I think the lady fell like 10 years ago for 150 grand and we didn't pay her. And that was half of what we ended up paying the other person in 6 months. So that one really was another one that bothered me. And with no, as a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer, but I can look and say, if you give me some paperwork, why we reduce something, I can kind of figure it out. I don't have to go to law school for that, but I had nothing. If you remember me asking, saying, why is, why are we reducing that X? He said, oh, we came to an agreement. Well, you understand what I'm trying to say?
I don't remember, I don't know what specific case you're talking about, but I know that, I have faith in the work of all the attorneys in our office. They don't come to the council and make recommendations.
No, you were there, it was you yourself, not someone else.
Fine. As far as handling individual cases.
But have you ever heard of paying someone within 30 days that amount of money?
I don't know what amount of money you're talking about, but.
Well, I don't want to get into it because it's probably legal.
Paying someone, paying on a claim within 30 days, sure, that happens. There are times, I mean, usually our attorneys are having to explain to judges why we're paying things, longer, with a longer time frame than courts usually would prefer.
Okay. Yes.
Just a super quick question, thank you, Chairwoman. This is specifically to the hourly rate for outside counsel, Jeff. Is that information public?
It's not public. There's no requirement that it be public. However, engagement letters properly redacted can be accurate and are public.
So.
Yes, please.
So, I mean, I think it's very clear that this committee is always gonna champion transparency.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're willing to share if asked with this committee?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, Pro Tem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Jeff. Solicitor. A couple of questions already have been mentioned. Just to be clear, in 2000, you indicated 2012, it was the outside legal service. How much was that? 1.9.
This is based on the spreadsheets we received from finance. 1.9 million spent.
And then I'm going back to this for clarification of my own. 2021, as a total budget for your department, how much was that?
The total budget or for outside counsel? 1.9 is what was spent on outside counsel in 2012. But
for outside counsel 2021?
2021, again, I have 1.5 million, but I think I heard the auditor give a different number. I'm just going with what
you have.
What I have. from finance.
And then just up to now, it's how much?
Well, the budgeted amount for this year is 1.4 million.
And
Excuse me, just a minute.
budgeted for 2022, you said, is 1.4 million?
I believe both last year and this year, the budget, I could be wrong, I'm it's roughly in the vicinity of 1.4 million. With the budgeted amount, it may be 1.35, thereabouts.
And where we're at?
Madam Auditor, would you like to?
I stand corrected, the budget is 1.162 million for fiscal year 23. And fiscal year 22. And fiscal year to date, fiscal 23, I have 1.1 million.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes,
I have a couple. I too have expressed to you in terms of my surprise learning that we didn't have, as a city council, we don't have our own attorney. And I've said my comparison to the General Assembly with being in the government, you certainly answered that question. I would love to have you on the record in the sense of your thought on it. Because just as Councilman Sanchez indicated, that we are the legislative body and the mayor is the second, right? So that's like, for me, again, just in general, just indicating that, yeah, we have a one attorney or law office for the state, that is the Attorney General's office. I'd like the Attorney General just pretty much indicating to the Attorney General is the lawyer for the governor's office, for the Senate, and for the House. So I just want to, if you could just shed some light, one, your thoughts on, obviously, I know where you stand, because you already said it in the sense that this is the perfect model for well, not perfect, but the common model. But I still, with the position that I think that we as city council should have the ability to hire their own attorneys, because again, separations of powers, as I like to say. But my question then to you is, can you share your thoughts on it more so than, and can you give us some examples of other cities that actually have this type of model?
I mean, I'm not familiar with, well, the type of model that we have, I think is what's most common. Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Charlotte, Durham, Greensboro, Atlanta, Jackson, New Orleans, Troy, Michigan. I mean, I could go on and on and on. Sacramento, Austin. I think that there's no perfect model, and I will tell you when either we do folks in my position at these offices throughout the country through the Lawyers Association, we have every month or two have Zoom meetings to talk about things. And one of the common challenges we discuss about how to navigate is how to deal with when it's not working perfectly because our client isn't working well with each other. But it's still, it might not be perfect, but it's still, I think, conceptually better than having warring law departments constantly running to court to resolve legal disagreements. I don't think you'd want necessarily to have a council and administration constantly battling each other legally. It can be challenging for the lawyers, for the law department. I can assure you there are times that folks in our department wouldn't mind if there were different attorneys for different bodies because it can be difficult to navigate. But I think as far as what is most effective in terms of providing legal representation in council, this is by far the most common, at least as far as I'm aware, and is probably the best model we can have. And I think it's incumbent upon us to do the best we can to just focus on being a law firm for the city government. We try to do the best job we can as lawyers for the city government.
So, okay. So the model, the state has, the Senate has their own lawyers, House has their lawyers, and the governor has their lawyers. You, in your opinion, wouldn't work or that may perhaps the state should, not should, but at least consider looking at these models that work so much better, as you indicated, in the cities at the time.
You know, it's interesting because I think the way it works in the state is how states typically function. Okay, states typically have the legislative body has their council and governor's office have theirs, and there may be an AG with county DAs. That's just not common with municipalities or county government.
Then, in terms of holding the city solicitor's office accountable in a sense.
Sure.
Obviously, you are a lawyer, citizens are a lawyer. Do you provide a report to the mayor or city council or to the people?
Yes, well, we provide a report annually to the city council.
Can you come before the city council?
It's a written report that's submitted to the council, but I think that there's frequent and regular interaction between attorneys from the law department and the city council as we staff every single council committee. Council staff or council members are welcome, encouraged, free to reach out to us. We are happy to assist with drafting ordinances or analyzing ordinances. We get asked when there's legislative proposals at the State House, what does this mean? Is this good or bad for us? Should we oppose it? Should we support it? So I think that there's not distance between the law department and the council or the administration of the various departments.
Yes.
What is the turnaround on decisions when departments or even our treasurers or internal offices seek an opinion from your office? What is the turnaround? And are there any pending, or do you keep a tab of decisions not being rendered?
I mean, it really depends on
boards and just in general.
Sure. I mean, it depends on many factors because we're handling so many different things. There are times where a number of attorneys are like completely buried in litigation matters and they can't, the court won't wait for us. And it's not, and I want to be very clear, this is not, this is a team. We have, might sound like a lot, but 19 attorneys for all the things we're working on is challenging at times. So we do the best we can to respond appropriately and as efficiently and quickly as possible. When there are really, there are plenty of situations in which we also think it's important to have more than just one attorney review something. Different attorneys in the office have different levels of experience and areas of expertise. And we also are aware that there are plenty of times where the decisions we're issuing could be controversial, could, be challenging to incorporate. And so we don't just have one of us be the only one responsible for coming up with the final conclusion. We'll need more than one of us to review and make sure we're giving what we think is the right answer or the best answer.
So you don't have an average time of that turnaround? And also,
We might have average time, but I don't know what I haven't calculated average time. There's certainly going to be variation depending upon what's going on with other matters and what the question is and how complex it is.
Do you keep track of the pendings of something that, in a sense, you don't render opinions, or just let it die, just let it flow?
I don't think we let anything die.
No, well, let's just say tables, in a sense, for this purpose. Decisions, do you keep track of decisions that perhaps someone, a board or a department asks and it's just lingering out there? Do you keep track of
The
those?
attorneys
As a
who are
office?
advising certain boards and commissions, yeah, they keep track of the questions that have been asked of them and responses they're providing.
Thank you.
Councilor Warriors.
Yeah, Jeff, I don't want to be a dead horse. I just want to share a thought and then ask a question that was sort of asked, but I wanted to get your view on. But I had opened up sort of my question regarding that the Harrisburg Associates versus City of Providence. I don't want to talk about. I want to sort of respect that we don't talk about specifics of that case, and so I'll connect with you later about that. I want to share just my feeling, and I think I ought to do this, share this because I feel like my neighborhood would want me to, and I think it's important I do it with the finance committee especially, and we have the amazing attorneys here as well. I think just far too often when we incentivize the wealthy and powerful in the city, we give them money. And when we incentivize the poor, we do it by taking away money from them. And so I just, as for a general statement, a broad statement, if I could reach the minds of all of you, I think far too often we're just giving in and we're letting these folks off the hook, in my view, and we're doing a disservice to hardworking residents who have to bear the brunt of these tax deals, which are giveaways. So I just wanted to share that thought. It's not necessarily a question, Jeff, but I did have a question for you regarding sort of like, I know we've kind of talked, I think many of us are asked questions that probably could be summarized as like sort of a conflict of interest. I guess in your view, when do you think it's appropriate for the council to seek a legal opinion from outside counsel?
I mean, I think that's just not possible to give a general, it's a really hard thing to just give a very generalized answer. It would be very fact specific. The council has the authority to pass an ordinance to hire outside counsel. It's very rarely done, but it can do so. It's not general counsel, but you know, the ordinance, I think, appropriately would have to be fairly specific as to what they're hiring outside counsel for. But it has been done.
May I ask another question?
Yes, go ahead. Councilor Warriors.
Is there, so there's like no examples in previous councils where you could think of like, hey, this maybe outside counsel could have helped facilitate this decision?
Outside counsel, like hiring counsel that's not.
Yeah, like if was there a dilemma where, you know, there was, you know, a clash between council, the city, the police department, you know, just all of these departments, and perhaps an outside counsel could have helped alleviate some of that burden. If like, can you think back to a situation where the council could benefit from receiving legal counsel from the outside to help? And I know that's kind of like a loaded question. I don't know if I'm quite articulating the
No,
way.
I mean, I think
I
I'm
don't hear.
understanding what you're saying.
Okay.
I'd have to give that some more thought. I mean, I think that is potentially going down a very dangerous, slippery slope. You know, we hope that you have faith in the law department and that we, again, focus is on giving correct legal advice. If there is truly a legal conflict of interest, it's in our interest and everybody else's that we do hire outside counsel for that purpose. We're not interested in getting involved in matters where there's a conflict of interest. As I said, it can be complicated for municipal attorneys. In fact, from discussions I've had and we've had with Supreme Court counsel that's sort of investigate or provided advice on conflicts, we've noted that even the case law suggests the courts have difficulty trying to help municipal attorneys figure out when there's a conflict or not. Because we're sort of encouraged or we're discouraged from too aggressively finding conflicts, because it would be very burdensome and costly to the city if we're too conservative in running and saying everything's a conflict, so let's hire separate counsel. That would be more protecting ourselves than the city. So.
Okay. Any more questions? Okay. Councilor Barkiston, who has another kind of question. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for taking the decision to be reappointed, and thank you to all your team lawyers. Out of the 19 attorneys you have, how many of them are full-time?
All of them.
All of them are full-time. And everybody has a different position or degree to work. Some of them are real estate lawyers, some of them are traffic lawyers, or is it in general, is it attorney?
Well, I mean, everyone has to wear multiple hats, but there is certainly some level of specialization amongst the team, yes.
Under the authority that you signed to consent order for converted commercial properties into the A law, you don't mind if you provide report how many properties you approve under this particular loophole or A law that we have to the committee, so we can find out how many we have out there, because so far, I'm not sure. I think we have like 45 TSAs. And we have a lineup of people applying for it because they think it's a beautiful spot to go for, and your team is responsible to go through these TSAs and A law. But I'm more into the A law report to find out if these properties qualify to go this route.
So Councilor, you're asking the city solicitor for a list of all the properties under A law right now?
Correct.
Okay, I think that's.
Sure. Is that right?
Yes, that's fine.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? Yes, Councilor Stanton.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you, City Solicitor, and sorry for not addressing you with your title earlier. So this question stems from experience that I had a few months ago. At some point, I was out eating at Los Angeles, and I happened to see you and the previous mayor and some other folks enjoying dinner. So I mean, my question is that a common practice for you to have dinners with the mayor? And if so, do you seem that's appropriate? So I'll let you answer that.
Sure. No, there's not time to do that very often. But the previous mayor and I were colleagues at Rhode Island Legal Services, so we knew each other through that. I'm guessing, because it's not frequent, that you might have seen us with another former colleague having dinner from Rhode Island Legal Services.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just one final.
Yes.
I mean, this.
All right. One final question.
Yeah, then I'm ready to take.
Okay.
And I ask this of everyone, and you're not gonna be the exception. You have 20 attorneys. I see that you also represented, I guess, half here now with male and female, so that's a good thing. I asked the question of MBE, WB. Do you have also any Latinos, Asian? How diverse is your staff, and what is your goal?
Yeah, so, no, there are no Asian members of the staff. Latinos, we have 6.
And you are 2 years.
Huh?
How many years you were in Argentina?
A little over 2 years.
So he's 2 years Latino. I'm sorry.
I lost control. Was just distracted for a minute. All right, so did you have your question? Counselor Anderson.
Thank you. And this might be more a question for you, a process question.
Okay.
But first, I also really want to acknowledge all the staff. So thank you, City Solicitor, but all the staff who stayed. I'm a very passionate person, and there are very few people who I've worked for who I would stay this late at night for a meeting for. So thank you guys so much for being here. That really shows a lot. So I'll just say that.
We appreciate you too.
The question I have, which may be for you, Council Chairwoman, is it sounds like a few things came up, including with not Chairman, oh my God, Councilor Royas, where there were questions about a specific case, and the need for maybe an executive session to talk through some things. Is that something we could, not that I want to make you go through this again, but for knowing that there isn't a time pressure for it to be on the next council
So
meeting?
I think the 8 law,
Yeah,
general, we will be having a separate discussion regarding that at some point. And session is what we need to do. We will consult with, we will consult with the president and council president, and we had planned on making that one of our agenda items, so we will spend some time.
And if that was, can I ask you another question? If that was related to the questions that Councilor Royce had, does it make sense if we can, and I'm not necessarily recommending this, I'm asking this as my last question, does it make sense to combine when we take a vote on the city solicitor with hearing more about what's happening?
We can't, because we have certain time parameters. That's not before us. I haven't set an agenda item.
Okay.
And so that is going to be a separate issue that will be taken on at a later time.
Thank you.
Madam Moore.
I have one question, Jeff, that I tried to ask you regarding one of your cases. Do you perform a fiscal note on your cases?
No.
All right. Okay, with that, any more questions? Okay, I have a motion.
I make the motion that we reappoint City Solicitor Jeff Dana.
Thank you. Second? You have a second? A second? Okay, we need a second or. Okay. We have another motion.
I'll make a motion to continue it.
I'll second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Nay.
So it's a tie.
So it fails.
It's a tie, fails.
You need to point. Pointer tonight.
So, Madam Clerk.
Or City Solicitor. Right. I mean, what happens here now?
So the motion failed, so
Make a motion. The motion to continue failed.
yeah.
So I will ask for another motion.
Make the motion that we continue.
May I second the city solicitor?
Can we do that, even though it failed again?
Wait, are you going to be making that motion?
I'm
Yeah.
sorry, can I have a point of order?
Yeah,
Can I second the motion?
I think, yeah, I don't see why not. I don't see why not, Madam Chair.
All right, so I would have.
So,
Call for another
So the motion is to retake
Yes, to reappoint.
to. Was it is to continue, because we're not going anywhere to continue submit the.
It's gonna take some time.
It's still gonna be a lot, so that's why, if we continue it, we'll take another vote at another time. Can we can still, once it dies, it dies, or we can?
I think that motion's dead. I mean,
I have numbers if you want it.
Thank you.
That's. Huh?
We need an opinion on
Yeah.
what our next course is. Oh, if I can second a motion.
yeah,
And
I'm certain you can second.
And solicitor may make a motion?
I don't think you can make them. I don't know what the committee's rules are. I don't think you can make the motion.
Do we? Okay, so, all right, so, I'm told that I just for calendar, just for a calendar purpose. If we have another, if we do continue this until February 2nd, then it will be on for the next agenda, which is what we have a time commitment here, and so we have to honor that. Okay.
So they're checking the.
Go ahead and make it, I mean, are you changing your motions?
Oh, I certainly, let me see.
So do we have another motion?
It's if you can be, you can renew a motion. You can renew a motion. Making a motion again after it's been defeated is called a renewal of motion. As it's obvious from the name of the motions, we tend to amend something previously adopted. These motions only relate to things that have been adopted.
So we have to.
So wait for the voice.
We have another motion on the table right now.
So we can. Until we wait for the voice.
I just feel one of the both the full committee here. This is over.
Yeah, that's what I.
You've always said that 7:30.
Okay, well, we do it. Just change it. We send them in something.
If we make.
Motions for-
I'm sorry, we have no motion on the floor right now, is that correct? Yes, thank you. Is there another motion?
If the bylaws are-
What we're waiting for? City solicitor, are we waiting for something?
You had asked the question. It appears from reading Robert's rules, you can't reconsider the motion that failed.
Fine,
But,
that's
but
fine.
you can consider the motion to pass because that was never acted upon, to reappoint Mr. Dana. So, and you could clearly second a motion to approve, well, whatever motion.
So I make a motion to reappoint Jeff Dane to.
And we have a motion to reappoint and it's made by Pro Tem and a second for Council Ring. All in favor? Aye. All opposed?
All right.
3 in favor, 1 opposed. Thank you so much. You might need your help. All right, may I have, Madam Chair, would you please read item number 4?
Item number 4, certificates from city assessor 63J and 63K recommending the same be canceled pursuant to the provisions of section 14 and 15 of Title 44, Chapter 7 of the General Laws of the State of Rhode Island, 1956, as amended.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for all you do for the city.
Thank you.
Okay, who do we have to present this evening? It's hospitality in the city assessor. Please swear.
Yes. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that the testimony that you are about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Please state your name and your position for the record.
Janice Muscateri, City Assessor.
Thank you so much for coming. Nice to
Thank
see
you for
you.
having me. Nice to see you.
Okay, all right. Can you just take us through, please explain in a little bit of process, because we have some new council members. So if you could just explain what you have before us.
Sure, before you is a list of abatements, which are corrections to tax bills for different reasons. It could be a tax appeal, a tax exemption, a correction. You'll also have, that's for real estate, and when you get into tangible, you may have corrections to the annual reportings, again, appeals, corrections, exemptions. So basically, these are just corrections to what we issued for tax bills.
And so can you just explain the attachments, just so that, you know, so these are the specific properties that are being abated and the amounts?
Correct.
Okay.
So 63J of your packet. There's a list of real estate abatements. And these abatements are for the time period between April 1st, 2022 through June 30th, 2022. So generally, we submit these two quarterly.
And then you've attached a summary with the grand total.
Yes. And that summary will break down the tax year. Then it will, there's a second summary that will show you exactly the reason for that adjustment. You notice that you have the reason codes. E, I don't know if everybody has it in front of them in the summary sheet, but E stands for an elderly exemption. HSOO is for homestead exemption. And indigent is for a person who has trouble paying their taxes based off of their income.
And can you explain the homestead exemption, why it is?
So based off city ordinance, a person who purchases a property within the city is allowed to come to the assessor's office immediately with the required proofs to prove residency. And then we can then prorate their bill based on the time period for which they are considered residents during that calendar year.
Right.
You'll notice that that is usually a majority of the abatements reported to quarterly.
Do you have any questions from committee members? Yes.
Any abatement around veterans? Exemption and stuff like that?
You will see them if someone has come into the office and actually provided proof of their veteran status. We certainly abate their bills. Generally, the bills are already issued with any exemptions. Elderly and veteran usually come in before the end of the year and we have them apply to the bill so that when the bills go out in July, they're already there, calculated. However, there are times where they may have failed to come in, it wasn't applied correctly, and you will notice that it's been corrected after the issuance of a bill. That's when you see them on this list.
I just want to let you know that I have, there's still a 61 or 62H certificate that is in finance from the last term that included the 8 law departments of the abatements. Mr. Solicitor, can you explain why we no longer put settlements on these certificates for the committee?
Council approval is not required for those, and there's no requirement that the council vote on that. And the request was to not include matters that do require council approval in the same batch as matters that don't require council approval.
I'm sorry, so the 8 law, you're saying 8 law does not require council approval?
No, nope.
Can you explain the process for that?
I wish actually Senior Solicitor Freeze was still here, because she's the actual expert.
We can call her back.
Remember, I'm a manager, but so matters that, tax appeal matters that are resolved in litigation do not require council approval.
Can I just ask a follow-up question? Is there a reason it doesn't go through claims and pending suits?
Yes. I know that Ms. Freeze has provided a memo in the past, so we can re-provide the memo that she has drafted explaining the reason, the legal reason.
I think we're definitely gonna wanna dig into that. I think particularly when we take up the 8 law, we really like to discuss that in depth. I think when we discuss that as a separate matter. Because I think we need to understand why that is.
Yes, she'll be happy to provide, we'll be happy to provide the memo, and I'm sure she'll be happy to.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Madam Auditor.
Section 2-99 says that you should go quarterly, even if it doesn't require council approval, it still should be reported to the council. I think it's fair that the council know how many tax abatements are happening and how many settlements. Number one. Number two is, if you don't do a fiscal note, how do you know if it's a small claim or not?
And
I just told you up 1 minute. Can you explain fiscal note first?
When you're settling cases, you have to have an idea, because according to section 2-99, you have up to 3,000 or 10,000 that you don't have to bring it to council. Otherwise, to claims and pending suits, otherwise it has to go to claims and pending suits. So if no one knows what the fiscal note is and what the cost is, how do you know if you have to bring it to council to begin with?
we know what we're settling for, so if we're settling under the amount, then it doesn't have to go before claims and pending suits. If we're settling for above that amount, then it does go before claims and pending suits. We don't settle cases with, you know.
AWOL is not a settlement?
AWOL is a resolution of a tax appeal.
Which is a settlement.
Okay, I think we've outlined the problem. And I think we're gonna have to devote some time to this issue, because I think that we've outlined the problem. So I think we're gonna have to do discussion. Any other questions regarding this particular certificates? Yes, go ahead, Councilor Anderson.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for this presentation. As a rough percentage, and I don't think it needs to be, how many folks apply for tax abatement and don't end up receiving them?
A small percentage.
Okay.
The ones that would not receive them, it would be the result of an appeal denial.
Okay.
And our percentage of appeals to the assessor's office is a very small percentage.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions on this?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
So sorry, Councilor.
Next time bring a flag.
You can just say hey.
Thank you very much for being here, and I noticed your department has a lot of people with different languages to help the community. Like in this case, when these people come, do they get some source of help? Like how we can help them not to lose their property, or help them to,
Help them not to lose their property?
yeah,
In what aspect? Do you mean they're behind on taxes?
be
or-
behind taxes or any way, because when they don't pay the second quarter, that's where you guys act, right?
That would be a better question directed to the collector, John Murphy. He has purview over that.
Okay,
I'm sure he has payment plans, but I don't want to speak on his behalf.
All right.
How that works.
thank you.
I might suggest that you have a meeting with him.
Sure, and he works on the your department?
He works with the tax collectors.
That's right. Okay, thank you.
All right, may I, have a motion? Moved by Pro Tem, second by Councilor Sanders.
But the motion was, what was the motion?
I'm sorry, was motion passed?
To approve, okay. And move?
It was moved by Pro Tem, second by Councilor Sanders. Okay, all in favor? All opposed? Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Second.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Pro Tem, second by Councilor Sanders. Thank you so much. I'm sorry again for a very long. meeting.
I don't know about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate that.
I say, this is, I don't know about 2 months from now.